running config, you'd note that there's a new interface that has been created here. It has already the MAC address, but it has no IP address. Before that, there was no interface. So the interface VLAN 99 that we created does show up in the running configuration file, right? So we go to configuration again, go to interface VLAN 99 mode. Now, what did we need to do? We needed to provide the IP address as well as the default gateway, right? So let's assign the IP address. The command for that assigning IP4 address is IP address, and then the address that was mentioned in the file was 172.1.799 and 11. So 72.17.99.11. The subnet mask would be 255.255.255.0. And we could also assign the IPv6. This one would not support IPv6, so I will not be doing that. Again, to make the interface go up, we'll use the command no shutdown. So no shutdown is the command to make this interface up. Then if we end, if we now see the show running config, you can see the changes. So, oh yeah, this one. So shutdown was in VLAN 1. This is not in shutdown. You have the IP address that we just assigned, and this one would be up, right? And it's a good practice to copy this running configuration file to the startup configuration file. So this startup configuration file, as we discussed, was the very first one that was loaded once when the switch was powered on. Now you do all these changes, and if you want to have this management interface VLAN 99 to access the switch remotely, you need to copy this running configuration or the running changes that we did to the startup configuration file. If we press enter, it asks for the destination file name. If you want it to be startup configuration, you just press enter and it would be done. Right, so let's go to, so this is all done. So we have entered global configuration mode. We've assigned a new interface. We configured the management IPv4. We left the IPv6 because this one would not support IPv6. If you need this one to support IPv6, we need to update the packet tracer version. So let's see the show version. This one is the version 12.2. So had it been 15, it would have been supporting the IPv6. Okay, so the next step is to configure the default gateway. Yeah, then in the slide it was also mentioned that we also need to configure the default gateway. Interestingly, you do not need to configure IPv6 default gateway because IPv6 takes its address from router advertisement messages, but not the IPv4. So you need to assign the IPv4 default gateway in order to reroute the requests or the data, but you do not need to do that in case of IPv6. So let's configure. So configure terminal and IP default gateway was 172.17.99.1, was it? Yeah, do that. And again, as we made some changes, so copy running configuration to start. So these are some shortcuts. So instead of typing running configuration and startup configuration, you can say copy run start and it would do the same purpose, right? So this is about it. And if you need to verify all these configurations, or if you need to troubleshoot, or if you want to find out whether it is really up or down, you can use the command show IP interface brief. And for IPv6, you can use commands show show IPv6 interface brief. Let's see the show IP interface brief. Show IP, and if you just press the small, like I pressed IN and then press tab, it automatically put in the complete command. So check out. So we have, if you see that we have this fast Ethernet port 0 by 1. It is up because it's connected to PC. Everything else is down. And again, this VLAN is is okay and we manually configure it, it is down, but it is configured with the IP address. So that was that. The IPv6 would not work because this is not supported. Yeah, a little quiz to test your knowledge, or were you attentive? So can you in the chat box provide me the correct sequence for this? So once you turn on the switch, what happens? What is the correct sequence? So there are four options. It's low level CPU initialization, load boot loader software, load the default iOS software, and then load the power on self-test program. So I'll give you say 30 seconds and I'll wait for your answers in the chat. So, okay, I believe there are no more answers coming. So there are two answers that are being prominent. It is DBAC and DABC. The correct one is DBAC because the very first step was to load the power on self-test program. Then the second was to load the bootloader software. The third was then the bootloader software does the low level CPU initialization. And then finally it loads the default Cisco IES software into your main file, right? Uh, do you want to have a break now for 10 minutes and then we can start on configuring the switch ports, right? So let's have a break of 10 minutes. It's 10:03. We'll come back at 10:13.